Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, the purpose of this podcast is to build a world with better bosses, and we do that by learning from the greatest minds in leadership today. Now, whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, you will get practical insights to help you lead with confidence. And today's episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, Cadre of Men, and Pharaoh Skincare. Check out the show notes for links to all of our sponsors and my books. Now, today we're talking about making leadership healthy again. With RFK Jr. getting confirmed this past week, I thought it would be appropriate to talk to an expert on personal health. My guest today is Dr. Philip Ovadia, a cardiosurgeon who has dedicated his life to keeping people off his operating table. He joins me to talk about some basic lifestyle principles to prevent heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. Now, if you want to be a great leader, you need to lead yourself first. And one of the best ways to do that is to maintain your physical health. So join me in this important conversation with Dr. Ovadia. Are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Philip Ovadia. More than 3,000 heart surgeries taught Dr. Ovadia that good health comes from lifestyle and nutrition, not from surgery. He's now on a mission to help people avoid the operating table by giving them the tools and mindsets to never need a heart surgeon. Dr. Ovadia works as an independent cardiosurgeon and runs Ovadia Heart Health, a telehealth practice that focuses on the prevention of heart disease. His latest book, Stay Off My Operating Table, shares the lifestyle principles to prevent heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn more about living a healthier lifestyle. So, Philip, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, it's an honor to meet you, and congratulations for all your success and the things that you're doing. I'm really glad to have you on the show and kind of learn from your journey, things you've learned in your life, and then how you're helping others get more healthy. So maybe start us off. Tell us a little bit about your journey, because you haven't always been healthy and fit. When did you begin to realize something was wrong and you needed to make a shift yourself?
Yeah, great question. And I think it will really help people to understand, where I'm coming from and how big a problem this is, because I was a very unhealthy heart surgeon. 10 years ago, I was morbidly obese. I was pre-diabetic. And I kind of came to a realization that I was headed for my own operating table, so to speak. I was traveling down that same pathway that so many of my patients had followed. And like so many of them, I was actually at a loss about what to do about it, because the advice that I had been taught to give these people, the advice that many in your audience will have heard, right? Eat less, move more, low fat diets. It wasn't working for me, and it wasn't working for my patients. And thankfully, about 10 years ago, I started to it really started with asking different questions, right? And being open to different information, as is so often the case around, making change and making change as a leader, which I know so many of your audience will be familiar with. And so I started coming across some different information, started thinking about what the problem with my health was differently. Started thinking about, what is good food for us to be eating and what might not be good food for us to be eating differently. And it led to an amazing transformation for me personally at first. I lost 100 pounds. I reversed my pre-diabetes. And along the way, I came to recognize that, this wasn't only about me, I guess I would say, right? I started thinking about my patients and how getting this different information to them could help them. And ultimately, the realization I came to is the vast majority of what I do as a heart surgeon should not need to be done. Whenever someone ends up on my operating table now, I view that as a failure, not of the person who ended up on my operating table, but of the medical system for letting their disease get to that point that they need this major heart surgery done. So, like you said, I'm now on a mission to keep people off my operating table and to empower them and educate them on how they can do that.
That is fantastic, and I'm so glad to hear that. I'm 57, and I grew up, with the food pyramid, and so we were taught certain, got to have this many grains in your diet, and so I grew up with pasta and breads and all that sort of thing, and so for me at least, it's been hard to reprogram my mind about the kind of the right ways to eat, but tell us a little bit of what's wrong with the typical American diet and the way that things that have been recommended to us over the years.
Yeah, the first thing that's wrong with the American diet, and now I've kind of broadened that the Western diet because
Yeah.
we've successfully, been able to export this diet as disastrous as it is that it's too heavily processed,
Mm,
meaning that we don't eat enough real food.
mm,
If you think back to your grandparents, your great grandparents, right, they were primarily eating food pretty close to how it exists in nature, the things that grew in the ground and the things that ate the things that grew in the ground, the plants and the animals. And in general, they didn't have a lot of these chronic health problems that we face today. One of the effects of the food pyramid, which is really, at the at the heart of the problem these days, is that it pushes people away from eating whole real food and pushes them towards processed food. We talk, and we have talked for the past 40 or 50 years, right, around low fat foods. And if you're going to take fat out of food, that involves processing.
mm,
And then you got to put something else in to replace that fat. And it's either non natural fats, adulterated fats, these things like vegetable and seed oils, or it's sugar, are the two things that you can basically put back into that food so that it's still palatable. And both of those are problematic. These are things that we, as human beings, did not evolve eating. Certainly not in the quantities that we're now eating them. And that leads to the whole host of what we call metabolic diseases. And these are things like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, all of these chronic diseases that we now face in, really epidemic proportions. And unfortunately, since the food guidelines came out, since the food pyramid came out originally in 1980, all of these problems have gotten worse.
mm. Yeah, it's what it seems like. Yeah, what we've been recommended to do is actually not good. So, yeah, interesting. So now you've embraced a low carb diet. Can you explain a little bit about the benefits of this type of diet or the benefits of the kind of diet that you've selected for yourself to get you healthy?
Yeah. So, what's most important to understand about low carb diets is it's targeting the the sort of biochemical problem that underpins all of these diseases,
Mm,
right? And that is, the scientific term for it is insulin resistance. The more sort of general term for it is just metabolic disease. And what this basically means is that your body is no longer able to process carbohydrates in particular. And it turns out that insulin resistance is pretty common. One study from, which is now almost 10 years old, showed that 88% of the adults in the United States had some element of metabolic disease, right? So let me repeat that. 88%, nearly 9 out of 10 adults in the United States has some element of metabolic disease. And once you have this metabolic disease or this insulin resistance, your body can no longer process carbohydrates properly. And the best way to fix this, and the good news is it is fixable, is the less carbohydrates you eat, it gives your body's metabolism, a chance to recover from this. You can actually reverse the insulin resistance. And when you do that, you can start to reverse or prevent those end stage diseases that we focus so much on, things like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. And so that's the power of low carbohydrate diets.
mm,
it's not the only way to achieve it. The meta kind of rule, right, that I talk to people about is that eating whole real food, right? We talked about the primary problem is all of this processed food we eat. So the first step is to eat whole real food. And then within that, low carbohydrate diets are particularly effective for people that have insulin resistance and metabolic disease.
When we talk about low carb, what is that in terms of a daily input?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to understand, what is a carb, right?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
there are some things that are obvious, right? The bread, the pasta, the cereal. But even, vegetables, right, are carbohydrates. And, the balance of how much you need to eliminate is going to be somewhat dependent on how bad your metabolic health is to start with.
Okay.
The average standard American diet, right? Standard Western diet uh, consumes between 300 and 600 grams of carbohydrates a day,
Wow.
right? And yeah, it's amazing. People don't realize that carbohydrates, right? When you look at that food pyramid, again, remember that whole base, the bottom two panels are all carbohydrates, right? You have
Yeah.
your bread, your wheat, your pasta, your grains, and then you have your veggies and your fruit right above it, right? And that is all carbohydrates essentially. So the average Western diet is about 60 to 70% of the calories are coming from carbohydrates. There are various definitions of low carb diets, but I think anything under 100 grams is a great start, right? So you're going to be cutting that by a third or a fourth from the usual. And most people who are kind of serious about low carb dieting are going to keep things under 50 grams a day of carbohydrates.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, that's excellent. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think that that is the obvious sign right there. You're saying between 300 and 600 grams now today in our current diet, and then taking it down to something less than 100, or if you're really serious, getting down to 50. I think that's a big shift for people, and it's about eating differently, I would imagine, and sort of so one of the things I found is I've sort of shifted in my diet is like I had to unlearn a lot of, like, especially as an older adult, is I had to unlearn like everything I learned. Like, I mean, I remember thinking to myself that, well, pizza must be good. It's got bread, it's got cheese, and it's got sauce. It's got to be great for me, right? And I realized that pizza is like one of the worst offenders because of the high fat and the high carbohydrate content. But how do how do how do you? I mean, how do people deprogram themselves from the way we've been doing things wrong for years?
Yeah, that's the difficult part, right? Because
Yeah.
and I always like to think of these things not by what you're taking away. It's really what do you want to feed your
Mm.
body, right? What do our bodies run best on? And it turns out that animal protein is the most nutrient dense fuel that we can give our bodies. And of course, most animal proteins, red meat, have been villainized, in our diets for the past 50 years. And they've been villainized because of the types of fat that are in them. And it turns out that the types of fat that are in, animals that come with animal protein are actually the most beneficial fats that we can give our bodies.
Mm.
But this is some serious, deprogramming, like you said, that we need to undergo because we've been told, right? And, understand as a heart surgeon, right? That programming was magnified, probably 10x, right? Red meat
Yeah.
was the enemy. Dietary cholesterol and things like eggs is the enemy. And it turns out that these are actually the most nutritious foods that we can eat, the most nutrient dense foods that we can eat. They actually provide us with all the nutrients we need. This is another thing that people, don't understand. We talk a lot, vegan, vegetarian diets, right, are always promoted for health. And we talk about all the vitamins and minerals that are in, vegetables and fruits. But it turns out as human beings, those vitamins and minerals that are in fruits and vegetables are largely inaccessible to our bodies. We don't have the proper digestive mechanisms to extract those nutrients. Now, ruminant animals, things like cows, right? they have multiple stomachs. And the reason they have that is because they are designed to extract those nutrients from the grass, from the vegetables, from the stuff they're eating. And then those nutrients go into their muscles, right? Into their meat and into their fat. And the way that humans really have evolved is eating animal protein and animal fat. And that's how we get all the nutrients we need. So, fun fact that people don't always realize, when you look at a vegan diet, right, a purely plant-based diet, and you look at a carnivore diet, a purely animal protein-based diet, it turns out that you cannot get all of the essential nutrients that you need from a vegan diet. And when you talk to anyone who's doing a vegan diet well, they're taking supplements to make up for those nutritional deficiencies. A carnivore diet does not require supplementation. We can get every vitamin, mineral, nutrient that we need from just eating animal products. And, that should kind of tell us something about these diets. And I'm not saying a vegan diet is a bad diet. It certainly can be a lot better than, again, the standard Western diet. But it's a lot of that programming, that education that we need to overcome to get people back to eating the whole real foods, the animal proteins and fats that are going to provide the most nutrient density and the best fuel for our bodies to run on.
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. And so my question to you was how is making this shift in your life? I know it was 10 years ago, and you've developed some new healthy habits. How has this affected you personally, and then how is it affecting the people that you're coaching, the clients that you're coaching? What's been your change? What's been their change as they made this shift to a better and more healthy diet?
Yeah, so I can say personally today, having turned 50 years old a few months ago, I am in better shape than I was literally in high school. I wear smaller clothes. I have more energy. I think my mental focus, my mental clarity is better. And, I can now maintain a very busy life, right? I still work as a heart surgeon. I run my telemedicine practice. A couple of sort of affiliated business pursuits around that. And I'm a father and a husband and all of those things. And I do that better today than I did, 20 years ago. And I've seen the same thing over and over in my patients, right? And my patients run the gamut, right? We have an 86-year-old in the practice currently who is doing phenomenally. And he says he feels like he's 50 again. And we have people who come to this earlier, right? We have 30 and 40-year-olds. But what we routinely see is, improvements in energy, improvement in mental clarity, right? This sort of brain fog that a lot of people experience clears. And with it, a lot of the medical conditions, right, that people are often focused on. Things like type 2 diabetes that we reverse, we get them off medications. Things like high blood pressure, again, that we get them off of medication and their blood pressure normalizes. The stopping the progression of heart disease, which is the main focus of my practice, right? And then other things like weight loss, right? Which most people focus on. And it turns out that weight loss is really the side effect. You get healthy and the body gets rid of the excess weight. It's really the reverse of what we've been taught, right? You need to lose weight to get healthy. It really is an opposite approach. You get healthy and that allows you to lose weight.
Yeah, and of course, this is a leadership podcast, and I often say that we have to lead ourselves first. And when you talk about the changes that you've had in your life, it sounds to me like you can be a better leader. You can be better at your job. You can be more focused when you have fixed this in your life instead of being high stress, high blood pressure, maybe constant doctor visits. You've got health problems. And I saw it in my corporate days where I saw a lot of overweight people eating fast food, running from meetings to meetings, and that's just a recipe for disaster. Those are the people that end up on your table, right? And so we don't want to do that. So if we want to be great leaders, we got to take care of this body because it's the only one we've got, right?
Yeah, definitely so. And, one of the kind of focuses of my practice is working with business leaders, entrepreneurs, leaders of all sort. And that has now naturally led us to branch out because a lot of those leaders then came to us and said, I want the amazing results that I've gotten for the
Mm.
rest of my team, for my employees. And so we've started doing employee wellness programs now. Just yesterday, we were at one of our employee wellness locations, a manufacturing company, and we work with their 3 shifts of factory floor workers, right? And the employees are seeing great results. And this all started because the leader of that company, the CEO, first joined my practice and got the great results for himself. And he had the foresight, right, to say, well, if this has benefited me, it can benefit my team. And, of course, it's a little bit of I guess you could say, a selfish thing, right? That he knows that all those team members are going to perform better, going to have better health. There's the, very real financial implications, right? There is self-funded for health insurance. And so his sick employees are costing him money directly. And being able to improve their health, of course, not only improves their life, which he cares much about, but also is going to help his bottom line. And so there are so many reasons that leaders and business leaders should be focused on, how do I help my team to optimize, and introducing health to them, this way of health can have massive impacts throughout an organization.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I love the idea of the leader doing it first and sort of setting the example. I mean, because we do lead by example. Our employees are watching us. If we're fat, we're out of shape, we're lethargic, and they sort of see, well, okay, well, I guess that's okay. And same thing is with being a father and a husband. If we're fat and lazy and we're overweight and we got health problems, that people think that's normal, and I think that we have to set a positive example for the people that we lead. And I think that part of that is staying in shape and being healthy, and I think we can be good role models for our organizations.
Yeah, definitely so. And when I look at, sort of what's happening across our nation and our society, we start to see how we can change, reverse the tide, right? And start to make meaningful change, is as more and more people, and especially more and more people in leadership roles, start to focus on this and start to demonstrate it, it's going to have that trickle down effect. I think it's the most, powerful thing we can do, right? We oftentimes have people who come to us, right, and they want someone else in their life to do this, right? Whether it's one of their relatives or a friend, that they're rightfully concerned about. And I always tell people, right, we can't force people to do this. People need to want to do this for it to be successful. And the best way to achieve that, right, is for you to demonstrate it to them, right? When they see the results that you're getting, that is oftentimes the most powerful motivator, and can get them to think, okay, well, I want to do that for myself as well. And then, we can be there to help them with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And what are your thoughts? I mean, I think we see a shift happening in the country. People are actually talking about these issues on a national stage, and we've got this "Make America Healthy Again" sort of initiative. RFK Jr., as of this recording, is still hasn't been approved yet, but likely could. What are your hopes with this? Are you encouraged by the messaging you're hearing and the things that are being talked about now on a national level?
Yeah, I definitely am, and I think it's a necessary part of this. I was pretty honored, actually, to be at RFK's inaugural ball in DC a few weeks ago. And as you said, we're hoping, actually tomorrow is his full Senate vote, and he gets confirmed. But yeah, just seeing this being talked about at that level, right, and being a focus of the new administration is very exciting. And the energy at that inaugural ball was unbelievable. lots of health focused individuals that are excited about, you know, making America healthy again. I mean, it's not really a political statement, right? And we have,
Right. Not at
you
all.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have RFK who came from the left, and we have Trump who, you know, comes from the right, and they've kind of come together on this.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, there's always the concern about what politicians promise and say, and what actually ends up happening can sometimes be very different. But, you know, my message, first of all, to each individual, right, is don't wait for the government to do this for you. You can make yourself healthy again today, right? And enough people do that. That's what's going to make America healthy again. And it will be great if we start to get those systemic changes that make it easier to do, right? Because I always tell people this is a very simple concept: eat real food, right? I joke that when I was thinking about writing the book, I first said, you know, I don't know how to write a book. It's 3 words: eat real food. Like, that's the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, it's a very simple concept, but it's very hard to do in our environment. And so that's where the governmental level stuff starts to come into play, right? Should we be re-examining these food guidelines, this food pyramid that has been an abject failure for the past 40 years? It's time, you know, we get sort of a fresh approach to this, right? And you know, one of the things we're seeing early in this administration is, you know, this sort of the Doge, right, initiative, right, re-looking at how government works and saying, you know, can we get the government back to working on the benefit of the people, right? Which is what it's intended to do. And I think the food guidelines are a perfect example of this. The food guidelines, quite frankly, got hijacked. They got hijacked by the food companies. And it's time to take a step back and say, we're going to redo this process, and we're going to look at what is actually going to benefit people instead of benefiting the food companies. And the unfortunate reality is that the food guidelines have been designed essentially to benefit the food companies, and that has come at the cost of worsening everyone's health. So it's one of the things that I hope gets done early on, you know, after RFK hopefully gets in there and gets started with things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it is encouraging to hear this. And it's encouraging to see young people. I have a lot of younger, 20 something employees, and they're on board with this. They have serious doubts about what they've been told whereas I think older Americans, we sort of like trusted our government, we trusted our institutions, and I think we're realizing now that that trust was falsely placed. But I think young people are saying, hey, something's not right here. We shouldn't be this unhealthy, right? And so I think they're sensing something's wrong, which is encouraging as well to see the young people sort of standing up.
Yeah, very much so. And I am very encouraged seeing some of the young people that are part of this movement and talking about these issues. And it gives me great hope for the future because, like you said, there's sort of less programming that we need to unprogram. And also, you know, they are not as unhealthy to start with as a lot of the adults are. And by focusing on this early, they're going to have an even better chance of you know, preventing a lot of these diseases that so many of us are now struggling with.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, what do you do at Ovadia Heart Health?
Yeah, so Ovadia Heart Health is my concierge telemedicine practice. So it is telemedicine only, right? We see patients all over the country, even internationally. But you know, you don't have to come to me. We'll see you wherever you are via telemedicine, and that turns out to be a very, you know, effective way of delivering this type of care and focusing on these types of issues. And, you know, we have a focus on heart health because of my background as a heart surgeon. But it turns out that, you know, when you address the underlying cause of heart disease, that insulin resistance that we talked about earlier, you affect a whole lot of other disease processes. And so we have people with diabetes that's getting better. We're getting people off of blood pressure medication. We're seeing people with autoimmune conditions that improve. and like I said, the weight loss that goes along with all of that. So very exciting and very rewarding to be keeping people off the operating table and helping them to make meaningful changes in their health every day.
That's such an important thing. And so thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because I think it is really essential, really important. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, the final message is really, that you can do this, right? You can take charge of your health. Like I said earlier, you don't need to wait for the government to do this. You don't need to wait for your doctor to do this for you. You are in charge of your health. You are in charge of what you eat, your other habits, which, we didn't talk as much about, but are important as well. How do you sleep? What kind of activity do you get throughout your day? And how do you manage your stress, are sort of the four big pillars that we focus on. But I encourage people to take charge of their health and to make those changes. And if, as many of your audience is, if you're in a leadership role, don't stop with yourself. Do this for the people that are important in your life, your friends, your family, your team. Demonstrate to them that this can be done, and then encourage them to follow the path as well.
Such an important message. I love that. I appreciate that, Philip. That's such a great message. How can our listeners find out more about you, your businesses, and your books, or your book?
Yeah. So I Fix Hearts is where you can find me everywhere on social media. Go to ifixhearts.com. In particular, I want to direct people towards ifixhearts.com/wellness. That's where your audience can find out about our employee wellness programs, which I'm hopeful they'll be interested in. The book is called Stay Off My Operating Table. It's widely available in all the usual places. And then, like I said, ifixhearts.com on all the social medias. And I'll also point people towards my podcast, which same name as the book. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. And we have great weekly discussions around these health topics.
Fantastic. And we're going to put links in the show notes for all of Philip's resources. And again, this is a really important message. And I love the way Philip left us with this idea that don't just do it for you. Take care of yourself, but also, make sure you can help the people that you love, that are important in your lives, your employees, your family, the people that you influence every day. This is really important. And stay off the table, stay off the operating table. So we don't want you there. We want you healthy. We want you leading your business. We want you being effective in what you do. So I highly encourage you to reach out to Philip if you got some questions. And again, we're going to have the links in the show notes. Follow those links and find out about more resources, especially the wellness program that he mentioned as well. So I really appreciate you, Philip, coming on the show, sharing your story, your journey, the things you've learned, and how you're helping others get more healthy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, John.
Thanks again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.